Imagine this. It's a quiet night. You are on a ferry cutting through the calm waters between Shelter Island and Long Island. The gentle hum of the engine lulls you into a sense of safety. But then, something feels off. The air gets colder. A thick fog begins to rise, shrouding everything in eerie silence. And then the engine stops. You are left adrift in the darkness. What will you do? Martin, a 46-year-old contractor, had a long, rolling day managing a project on Shelter Island. He looked forward to getting back home to Long Island, where his wife and 2 kids would be waiting for him. That morning before leaving for work, he kissed his kids goodbye, promising to be home in time to hear about their school day. His wife, always concerned about his late-night commutes, had reminded him to drive carefully. He had smiled, brushing off her concerns with his usual reassurance.
Don't worry, babe. I'll be fine.
By the time Martin drove his truck onto the ferry, he was exhausted but relieved. The ferry ride was his quiet moment of calm, a chance to catch his breath before returning home to the family he loved. Sitting in his truck, he gazed out of the dark, rippling water, taking deep breaths of the salty air. He thought about how his youngest had asked him to help with a school project that weekend, and how his wife had said she'd make his favorite dinner tomorrow, her homemade lasagna, the one the kids teased him for always eating twice as much as anyone else. That night felt no different at first. As the ferry pulled away from the dock, Martin noticed the lights on shore fading quickly, swallowed by a creeping fog. It wasn't unusual, but there was something about the way the fog curled and lingered that made him uneasy. Halfway through the crossing, a loud metallic grunt echoed through the vessel, and the ferry jolted. The engine stuttered and died. The ferry slowed to a halt, bobbing listlessly in the water. Passengers stirred from their vehicles, peering into the dense fog that surrounded them. It was as if the sea had consumed the world. A crew member's voice crackled over the intercom, instructing everyone to leave their vehicles and move to the main deck for safety procedures. The tone of his voice carried an edge of uncertainty that Martin didn't like. Reluctantly, he stepped out of his truck and into the mist, the cold damp air clinging to his skin. As Martin joined the other passengers on the main deck, he noticed something odd. A man wearing a black hoodie was pacing along the railing, his movements deliberate yet out of sync with the chaos around him. The man never looked up, keeping his face obscured and his focus on the water below. Martin couldn't shake the feeling that the man didn't belong. Whispers spread among the passengers, and some claimed they felt someone brush past them, but no one was there. A few swore they heard faint splashes in the water. The crew worked to maintain order, handing out life jackets and preparing lifeboats. But the unease grew thick as the fog. Eventually, the passengers boarded lifeboats one by one. Martin was among the last to leave the ferry, but when the rescue boats arrived hours later, he wasn't among the survivors. His truck remained on the ferry, but Martin had vanished. Authorities conducted an exhaustive search of the fog-covered waters, sending divers to explore the area. But neither Martin nor any trace of him was ever found. The mystery deepens as investigators interview passengers. Some recall seeing the man in the black hoodie, though his presence couldn't be explained. Others describe strange sounds and shadows moving in the mist. Then, Martin's wife came forward with chilling details. Just hours before he boarded the ferry, Martin had sent her a text. It read,
There's someone watching me at the dock. A guy in a black hoodie. I feel like he's following me.
Soon after Martin's disappearance, his family began receiving phone calls from an unknown number. On the other end was only silence, broken occasionally by the faint sound of rushing water. Local fishermen began to whisper about a sunken truck near the ferry's route, but the Coast Guard never found it. Ferry workers reported unsettling sightings. A hooded figure watching them from the dock on the foggy nights. One crew member swore he approached the figure once, only for it to vanish into a puddle of salt water. Someone said the figure is Martin, trapped between life and death, forever wandering the foggy waters of Long Island Sound. Others believe it's something older, something darker, luring unsuspecting souls into the depths. As the years passed, strange things continued to happen around the ferry route. Locals began to whisper about a figure, a man dressed in a black hoodie, who was seen not only on the ferries but also along the docks and nearby beaches on foggy nights. Some passengers claimed they had seen him watching from the shadows, his face hidden by the hood, standing still as the mist swirled around him. One elderly fisherman who had lived by the water for decades told a chilling story about the figure. He claimed that years ago he had been on his boat when he spotted the same man on the shore. The fisherman said the man was walking toward the water, never once acknowledging his presence. When he got close enough, the fisherman heard a strange, hollow sound, almost like water lapping against the shore. But the air was still, and no waves were near. The fisherman said the man simply disappeared into the fog, leaving behind an unsettling silence that made him feel as though he witnessed something he wasn't meant to see. Some residents believe the hooded figure is a ghost, trapped between two worlds. They say it is the restless spirit of a person who met a tragic end of those very waters. Others believe he is a harbinger of something worse, someone or something watching from the dark depths of the sea, waiting for the right moment to strike. A local legend tells of a long-lost sailor who once disappeared in a similar manner, vanishing without a trace during a fierce storm. Some say that the hooded figure is his spirit, forever condemned to wander the shores, looking for the lost souls of the ferry passengers, ready to pull them into the water to join him. The more stories that surfaced, the harder it became for anyone to dismiss the sightings. The figure, seen by so many, seemed to be connected to the fog. The eerie silence and the darkness of the sea, like a shadow waiting to consume anyone who crossed its path. And now, I leave you with a question. If you found yourself adrift on a foggy sea, surrounded by shadows and silence, what would you do? Tell me in the comments how you react, and remember, the darkest stories are the ones we live together. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Midnight Specters. If this story left you with chills, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who dares to listen, and subscribe for more tales of mystery and fear. Until next time, beware the fog. It might be hiding more than you think.